Hello guys, today this video will show you everything you need to know about the Shrinkwrap modifier. It's a follow-up kind of video to the one I made last week where I showed you the overview of this modifier and all of its use cases. Now we'll go deeper. I'll show you step by step how to use it. I'll show you kind of different techniques on how to go from simple car panels like this to more advanced ones like this one here for the padding, or just booleans with Shrinkwrap modifier and some bonus use cases at the end. Okay, once you have your base mesh done, like here, basically for a car it would be the whole body without any kind of holes, for example the door handles or anything like that, or at least a mesh without many details. What you're gonna do is duplicate it. Now you're gonna have two meshes. Let me move them to another collection, that way it's gonna make it easier for us. I'll just go in local view. So one of them, you will set your subdivision to something like 5 or 4. You want it to be very high because this will be your base mesh. It's not going to be used in the final export for your model, in your animation or anything like that. But you want more geometry, because if we need to add some to our non-base mesh, to our panels, then it's going to make it easier for the Shrinkwrap modifier to reproject those vertices onto the base mesh. So once you have that done, make sure you don't have any solidify modifier visible in either viewport or renders, because that can kind of mess up with the Shrinkwrap modifier on our final panels. Now I'll rename those the second mesh panel, and this one you will set subdivision level to 2 or even 1 if your computer is a bit slow, or if you don't need a super smooth mesh. What you probably have right now is, let me kind of delete some modifiers that are not needed. You probably have a mirror modifier, of course, maybe a bevel, and a subdivision. That's the basic. But what I'm going to add is a Shrinkwrap modifier. So I'll go over here, and then under deform, you'll find the Shrinkwrap. Now, for the target, quite easy, straightforward. Select your base mesh. And now if we go in edit mode, and I try to kind of move vertices around, you can see nothing happens. If I turn off the shrink wrap, you see it deforms. That's perfect. That's the basic setup. And what this allows you to do is basically, if I go ahead and kind of, I don't know, let's say I wanted to cut this panel, for example, for a door or anything like that. Well, then this allows you not only to create panel gaps that are pretty good, but it allows you to add details now, like so. Okay, yeah, it will still kind of edit the curvature in this direction, but it's not going to warp it in the other direction. For example, it's not going to ruin your reflections, okay? So don't worry if they don't, I was about to say, don't worry if they don't perfectly align. But that's because, yeah, the Shrinkwrap modifier was turned off. So you can see, whenever I add geometry, because Blender is not a CAD software, it's not a parametric software that uses kind of mathematic formulas and stuff like that, it will deform. It's basically just averaging the position of points. And so with the Shrinkwrap, we're keeping the original points. We're reprojecting all of those vertices onto our base mesh. So this is the basic setup for setting up car panels, because this will be the main use case of the Shrinkwrap modifier. But what if you want to kind of push it further? Well, I have a bit of an extreme scenario here with this. What if I told you that this one was kind of our final panels and this was our base mesh? Let me show you how, because this is an instance of our base mesh. So if I edit this, it will edit the base mesh, so not directly the panels, okay? So you can see if I pull the middle down, it updates on the other side. So that's perfect, that's what you want. And to show you that it is indeed just a shrink wrap, let me turn them all off. I have 3, and you can see how bad it would look without the shrink wrap. But because we have it, it reprojects all of its vertices onto this. But now you may ask, how do you create those creases? How do you get kind of indentations or offsets that are both positive, that sticks out of the base surface, the base mesh, and negative, that goes inward, like here. Well, this is with offsets on your Shrinkwrap modifier. So let me show you an example. So just with the car, just like with the car, I'll duplicate it. I'll make sure I don't have any solidify on my base mesh and on my panels for now. Now this one will be my lower poly panels. I'll just delete that just to make sure that the bevel modifier doesn't cause any issues. Then I'll go to the form, Shrinkwrap, and then select it here. I'll move it just below the subdivision surface. You can move it above, but the more geometry the Shrinkwrap modifier has to kind of deal with, the better the results. So you want them to be after the subdivision surface, because then it will use all of that new geometry created by the subdivision surface modifier to reproject onto your base mesh. So with that done, we don't need it anymore, so I'll just hide it. You don't delete it, that's very important. And now if we try to deform, perfect. Okay, so now how can we create that first crease, the negative crease? Well, actually we'll need two things. First, we'll need the vertex group. So this one will be called wrap. Okay, so this will be our just a very basic vertex group. You can see them as mask. So basically, you'll see here, weight. So think of the weight as the influence or the strength. So if it's at a strength of 1, this is basically 100%. It will wrap itself 100% onto the base mesh. But yeah, let's display that. So you can see everything is red, everything is at 100% shrink wrapped. It will be 100% projected onto the base mesh, even if I move that up. But now, what if I remove those vertices from the base mesh? Now you can see that they move up now, because they're no longer being projected. If I show you what it looks like, you can see here. So because I only have kind of the basic vertices, not the ones that are subdivided, Blender applies 0 strength here, and then it averages between the 0 and the 1. So you can see that these are 0, this is 1, and because Blender creates new geometry with the subdivision surface modifiers, then you can see that it averaged down over here. But in this use case, it's not very practical necessarily to remove vertices from the base Shrinkwrap modifier. But what if I told you that we can use multiple ones? So I'll just create a second vertex group. This is quite important. Then I'll go over here, drop down arrow, duplicate. You can just add one here. It's not a problem, but it's just faster to duplicate it, because that way you keep all of your settings here, and we can just change the vertex group. So now it's going to use the offset vertex group, or the vertex mask, or whatever you want to call it, and it's still going to be the same base mesh. Now here, the snap mode, not the snap mode, sorry. Oh yes, yeah, the snap mode. We want to change it to outside surface. Even if I see the inside here and I know my offset will be negative, I want the outside surface. It works just better, but feel free to try it. I can show you what it does basically. So here you see absolutely nothing, and that's not because it's broken or anything. It's just because we don't have any geometry assigned to that vertex group. So what I did here is just bevel that loop with Ctrl B. Then I'm adding a new one just to kind of contain. And here you can see it did nothing. And this is because of the inside surface. If you change it to outside and make your offset something quite big, then you can start seeing the crease, just like that. And now this is very useful, for example, for textiles, seats, or even windows, because then you can just have your flat surface for the window, and then you can create your window frame using a shrink wrap, your glass panel using another one, and so on. Now, what if I want to create kind of the I'm not sure. Is it the padded? How do you call that? The gilded, the little padding here. Anyway, I'll just show that to you real quick. So same principle. Because I want to have a different offset, I want to keep the negative one, but I want another one. I want just a positive one or one with a different distance. Then I'm going to create another vertex group because I don't want the whole mesh to be projected outward. So same deal, I'll duplicate it. And now you can see if we change it to positive, and now nothing happens. That's normal because nothing is assigned to this. If you see that I assigned it, then you can see that it gets projected out. Okay, so to create kind of this diamond pattern, you want to select the faces you want to kind of gild or whatever. Then I'll select them, go over faces, and I want triangulate faces. And then, actually no, that's not what I want, sorry. I want to poke faces, and then I want to twist to quads. So this will kind of create a X pattern, a lattice pattern, and then Blender returns them into quads, and this gives us our diamond pattern. Also, if you're trying this with a sheet, by default, you will have smooth corners like these. If you want sharp ones, you need to go here and change your all from to keep corners. And that will give you sharp corners, but only when two loops are going straight here. And now this doesn't work because we have this one connecting there. But we can resharpen them pretty quickly if we wanted. Okay, so now this is good, but we need some geometry in between the squares, the diamonds, just to tell Blender, okay, I don't want the whole diamond to be going up, I only want the center. So I'll just select the loops in between, and then I will bevel them using Ctrl B. And now you can see that the curvature still remained intact because we're being projected onto our base mesh. So this is basically where a Shrinkwrap gets very fun, because I can basically do whatever I want with the topology. Not 100%, but Blender will take care of most of it. So you can get very loose with your topology, and like here, that's shitty topology, no pinching. Of course here, yeah, because endgons and stuff like that, but you can get a lot more relaxed with your topology. So anyway, now I can select my diamonds here. Tac, 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 tac. Just like that. And let's leave them alone. I don't want to select those. I don't feel like it. So I'll inset all of those here and then assign them to the offset. Now you can see that's okay, but it's circular. And now this is where you will need to add loops. Let me just turn that off. Auto merge. Yeah, so with this pattern you need to be kind of careful with your edge flow. You can see that it's going all over the place, but for this demo I don't really care. I just wanted to show you basically what you can do. And now you could combine it with the negative offset as well. So when I when I beveled all the lines between the diamonds, it was to kind of be able to create a loop that would go straight across. And now I can assign this loop to the negative offset. So now this is a very ugly version of this one. And what I did with this, basically, same modifier setup by the way, just with the solidify at the end, I played with the weight paint. So if you remember what I told you about the masks, well, here I came in and painted manually the area. So basically, let me show you. So I did this at first, so you can see everything is assigned kind of the same weight. Let me even go to a more extreme use case here. So you can see very sharp diamond here compared to the other ones where they're more smooth. And then I go to weight paint. I go over here, I think it's blur. Yeah, perfect. And then I went in and blurred in the area. So let's say that the maximum in red is offset of 10 millimeters, and in blue it's at 0. Well, the green will be, for example, 3, the yellow will be 7, and then in red it becomes 10 millimeters. So it allows you to kind of get smoother results, smoother transitions. Now this is a very extreme scenario. I only used this technique once for a seat that I showed you in the last video, and it's not necessarily a technique that is super useful all the time, but it definitely has some use case to weight paint your vertex groups if you want. So for this one, it will be the same principle as the car. This would be my base mesh. I would duplicate, and now I'm not going to show you because it's going to be repetitive, but I would just go in, shrink wrap, then separate all the panels, and I would get a perfect seat that can be, I don't know, displaced, UV unwrapped, whatever. And now for a more common use case that I found for shrink wrapping and offsets. So you can see that this little indentation is made with offset, just like I showed you before. So this was just an offset that I manually made. Annotations, let's delete those. And for the grill though, this is a boolean. And now for the front, it might not be kind of, I don't know, very impressive, but here it's a curved surface and the reflections still look perfect. And so you can use your base mesh kind of to preserve your geometry when you're using booleans. So for example, for here, you can just go over there, wrap it here. And now occasionally you will have some glitches. For example, if I move it back here, you can see that you have the geometry of your cutter object that still gets there. Basically what you would need to do if you really wanted that position and you just want to fix it quickly, oops, sorry, let's just apply everything until the boolean, then here, and you can see that even with an end gun, this one or this one, we don't have any issues. And if I turn off the shrink wrap, however, okay, for sure. If I were to, let's say, extrude that over here, let me just, okay, perfect. Yeah. So you can see now everything is good. If you turn off the shrink wrap, you can see that you start to have some little shading issues. So yeah, you just need to experiment with it. Boolean can work perfectly fine. I'm using it quite a lot recently for curved surfaces mostly. Flat surfaces, you don't need the shrink wrap modifier for all of that. And here, same thing, it's an offset. So it was just a second shrink wrap modifier to create an offset. Now for more less modeling use cases and more varied ones, you can use a shrink wrap modifier on something else than a mesh. So here I'm using it on the lattice, and I'm using the vertex groups because yes, lattices have vertex groups to only shrink wrap the bottom of my lattice. So only the points over here are being shrink wrapped onto the surface of the windshield. So whenever I rotate that, I think it's this one, yeah, you can see that it still gets projected over here, and then I would just need to kind of rotate it back over there. But this is one practical use case of using the shrink wrap on something else. Now, what if I told you that you can use it as well on tires? Because you know, all the little pins were here. Well, I want them to follow the surface. In this case, it's not very useful, or at least very visible. But if you wanted your little pins to be, I think it's this one, right? Directly on the surface for whatever reason, maybe because you have a bevel at the base or anything like that, then you could set it to on surface, transfer the data or something to get perfect match. But this was created with the shrink wrap modifier. You can see here, this little black pattern was also created with a shrink wrap modifier. So you can see my windshield is projected onto the windshield base mesh, which is just this surface, perfect surface, looks good. And then my windshield I wanted to have a black interior and a clear center. And so I created new geometry with the base mesh, and if I turn it off, you'll see that it gets pretty wonky. Yeah, look at that. Look at how bad this is. But if we turn it on, perfect. Okay, there seems to be a little glitch here, but I'm not sure if it's just the matte cap. Blender has pretty horrible zebra matte cap. But in any case, you can see that it's much better than it was before. So this is pretty much it. If you want more detailed videos, if you want more use cases where I explain step by step how to create, for example, an object using this technique, let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to get feedback, to get improvements on the videos. And thank you so much for the reactions on the last one. It was quite unexpected. I made this video in maybe an hour, and I thought I would get 50 views, and now we're at almost 20,000. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.